Not yet art thou the man to catch the fiend and hold him, with fairest images of dreams enfold him, plunge him in the seas of sweet untruth. Yet for the threshold's magic which controlled him, the devil needs a rat's quick tooth. I use no lengthened invocation. Here rustles one that soon will work my liberation. The lord of rats and eke of mice, of flies and bed bugs, frogs and lice, summons thee hither to the door sill, to gnaw it where, with just a morsel of oil, he paints the spot for thee. There comest thou, hopping on to me, to work at once. The point which made me craven is forward on the ledge engraven. Another bite makes free the door. So dream my dreams, O Faust, until we meet once more. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe began writing the Faust between 1772 and 1775. Like that great novel that many aspiring writers wish to write and complete, but part one was not completed for publication until 1808, some 36 years later, with a revised edition in 1828 to 1829, while part two was published in 1832 after his death in March of that year. 60 years from start to finish, the literary work literally consumed most of his life. But the learned doctor and protagonist Faustus was that fellow who was a good target for a salesman that he could spot a mile away, ready and primed for sales pitches and a quick close by just telling him, "You look like an intelligent person." And the reader is introduced to this scholar in his study while he is attempting the scholarly task of translating the New Testament into his native tongue of German, beginning with the Johannine Gospel and vexing over the very first sentence, "In the beginning was the Word," causing him to remark aloud, "The Word, impossible so high to rate it, and otherwise must I translate it, if by the Spirit I am truly taught. Then thus, in the beginning was the thought." The first line let me weigh completely, lest my impatient pen proceed too fleetly. Is it the thought which works, creates indeed? In the beginning was the power, I read. Yet as I write, warning is suggested that I, the sense, may not have fairly tested. The Spirit aids me. Now I see the light. In the beginning was the act, I write. All the while, his disturbed canine companion is well aware that impending danger is approaching, but wrapped in his own precious thoughts, he dismisses the warning and commands his dog to cease disrupting his deep concentration so that he might complete the great works he had set out to accomplish. And into this scene, Mephistopheles descends without causing him any fright. Faustus remains under the assumption that he is in control, expresses frustrations with his guest's insistence upon speaking in riddles, and is even more astounded that were Mephistopheles in possession of any great power, that he might be bounded by certain rules, a concept beyond his comprehension, but for which, of course, he cannot accept the possibility of his own inadequacy, being a scholar, and places fault upon his guest, continuing his delusion that he is in full control of a guest that requires his permissions and invitations, unaware that he himself might be manipulated in his choices. And this interchange informs the reader that the learned doctor assumes that he knows more than he actually knows, a display of pride or even hubris as he engages in sophistries with his guests, saying, "The pentagram prohibits thee. Why tell me now, thou son of Hades? If that prevents, how camest thou into me? Could such a spirit be so cheated?" But far more intriguing is Mephistopheles' reply. "Inspect the thing. The drawing's not completed. The outer angle, you may see, is open left. The lines don't fit it." Mephistopheles knows that he cheated and had made the pentagram imperfect by nibbling on it as a mouse, but cast the blame upon Faustus and his imperfections. A manipulation in psychology that leaves the learned doctor unaware, still under the illusion that he is in total control and superior. And keep this in mind, as we fast forward to 1987 or 1988, when the case of Farid v. Smith was decided by the Second Circuit, a case about the famous Attica Correctional Facility in New York. Its superintendent, Harold J. Smith, and an inmate named Mujahid Farid. And this is a case that requires a discerning reading of the facts that had created the legal cause of action, because all the procedural history that brought the case to be decided by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, particularly since the case had first been commenced in the New York State courts. It is also interesting that on appeal, Farid did not specifically raise a violation of his religious liberty for whatever reason, but only a general averment that his rights under the First Amendment had been somehow violated. Very, very general. In February 1983, the acting superintendent, H.J. Speckert, had instituted a contraband policy prohibiting certain items from being delivered to inmates. And in September of 1982, before the policy was implemented, Farid began to receive packages in the mail, beginning with a tape player, which he loaned to another prisoner, in violation of a regulation prohibiting exchanges of property between inmates. In March of 1983, Farid received a package containing 2 books on tarot cards and a deck of tarot cards, which were also confiscated. Between 1983 and 1984, Farid also received a set of Everlast exercise gloves that were discovered in his cell, a package containing a cassette tape, a pair of pajamas, 2 pens, and a nail clipper, and a clock, most of which was confiscated. And even the court determined that these events appeared to be probing or a test of the prison's contraband policy. And the Second Circuit, a federal appeals court, stated that on December 30th, 1983, the state court entered judgment for Farid, holding that Farid was entitled to possession of the tarot materials, that the policies and practices denying him the materials were unconstitutional, and 3, enjoining Smith from interfering with Farid's effort to obtain the materials. However, the tarot books and cards were never turned over to Farid. After a year of lockdown orders, the significance of the facts in this case should be pretty clear. Farid was fully compliant with a stay-at-home order, locked in Attica prison. He was not meeting new people. He wasn't going out to lunch and dinner, partying his little personage off, beginning new relationships, or even dating online. But all of a sudden, he began to receive gifts from some person, a secret Santa outside the correctional system, who the court had even determined was attempting to test the contraband policy at a state prison with an interesting history, if you've ever heard about the Attica riots. And of all of the items that Farid had received, it was his tarot cards and books that presented the issue in the courts of the federal judiciary, but also the tarot cards and books that, even after prevailing in the state courts, the correctional facility still refused to return. But this is only the beginning of where the case becomes rather intriguing. Not only did Fareed find a friend on the outside, a secret Santa, he also retained the law firm of Paul Weiss, described on their own website as having been established in New York City in 1875. This is no punk-dunk, ambulance-chasing firm. Today, the office is home to nearly 800 lawyers, a large firm where only about 1% of attorneys work, earning the highest salaries, and is located in the heart of Midtown Manhattan on 1285 Avenue of the Americas. Longtime clients include many of the city's iconic companies and financial institutions. And so the next question that arises is, how did Fareed, with a friend who had been testing the contraband policy, also get a top law firm to represent him on a case involving tarot cards when in April 1984, Fareed brought action under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. The procedural history becomes even more interesting as the case proceeds through the federal courts because despite retaining a high-powered law firm with many, many connections, the state filed a motion for summary judgment, and not just a motion to dismiss, for which there are different standards of proof, as attorneys know. In what is often called a 12b6 motion, in especially federal court, a motion to dismiss or demurrer motion tests only the sufficiency of the facts in the pleadings to state a legal cause of action, and all allegations of fact are accepted as true. You say your nose is blue, we're going to take that as a fact, unless it's just totally ridiculous. We might not accept the fact that your nose is blue. However, a motion for summary judgment is granted when there is no genuine issue of material fact that the movement should prevail as a matter of law. No further discovery, no depositions, no trial is needed to determine the facts that are perfectly clear for anyone to see. Why is this an important distinction? Because had the state filed a motion to dismiss, Fareed's claim that his tarot cards were his religion would have to be accepted as true. But the state did not do that. The state filed a motion for summary judgment and specifically challenged Fareed's claim that the tarot cards and books that he had received as a gift were in fact his religion as he claimed. And in this case, the court stated the rule that to assess a free exercise claim, a court must determine, one, whether the practice asserted is religious in the person's scheme of belief and whether the belief is sincerely held. The same question that is being asked of healthcare workers in Arkansas. Two, whether the challenged practice of the government infringes upon the religious belief. And three, whether the challenged practice of the government furthers some legitimate objective. And they concluded that because Fareed has neither alleged nor submitted any proof that he sincerely holds to any religious belief, that mandates the use of tarot cards, we conclude that summary judgment was appropriate on the free exercise claim. There is some showing of proof that he has a sincerely held faith belief under this decision. A decision that in the Muhammad Ali case, or Cassius Clay case, they decided not to get into. Even the court found a reasonable suspicion about a prisoner in Attica Correctional Facility receiving gifts that appeared to be a test of the contraband policy, which is no less suspect than Fareed retaining a high-powered law firm in Midtown Manhattan that did not survive a summary judgment motion, essentially a judge telling you in court that you have no case and should not have brought it to court in the first place. But you are free to believe whatever you choose to believe. Yet, as Paul writes in his epistle to the early churches at Ephesus, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. To those in faith, behold, for you are sent forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And I charge thee, therefore, in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. For a time has come when they will not and do not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust do they heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. And they turn away their ears from the truth, and are turned unto fables. But watch thou in all things, endure afflictions, do the work of an evangelist, make full proof of thy ministry. Live long and prosper, Star Voyagers. This briefing is unclassified, as you were. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for Arlington Public School Board. Let's keep Mike Webb away from our students. Honest. Carry on. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
I used to be a Power Ranger in a former life.
Thunk, I could have had a vaccine.